Is the Hagmann Hagmann Report for today. It is Thursday, February 12th, 2015. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host of my son, fellow investigator, fellow researcher, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Folks, you're in for an incredible 3 hours of programming tonight. I got to tell you, we're so excited to be broadcasting tonight with respect to the topic, what lies ahead. But you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news, information, and analysis. We're the only show, at least we believe this, where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look well beyond the headlines, the bylines, bring you the news behind the news in our time slot every night. It's 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base, HagmannandHagmann.com. That's HagmannandHagmann.com. And check us out there. We're also simulcast by the Christian United Broadcasting Network at the HagmannandHagmannReport.com. Just thank you everyone for joining us, each and every one of you listening to us tonight. We know you're doing so purposely, on purpose, deliberately, and we thank you for that. We're very excited tonight because I've got to tell you, I am extremely excited to talk about this, more about this later, but we have a brand new sponsor, and a sponsor that we have. I'm just so excited to have them because of their product. It's Casper Mattress. Casper Mattress. Have you ever heard of them? If not, you're in for a real treat. Casper Mattress, they're an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the price you would buy out there in the marketplace at the mattress stores or your furniture places. The mattress industry has really forced people like us, like you and I, into paying really high markups, and Casper is really changing the way things are being done in the mattress industry because they're cutting the cost of dealing with, the resellers, the showrooms, and they're passing the savings directly on to you and me. I've got a Casper mattress, and let me tell you something. It has revolutionized the way I sleep. Folks, go to CasperMattress.com/CFP-radio, CasperMattress.com/CFP-radio, or better yet, much easier, go to HagmannandHagmann.com. You'll notice something new in the middle top of our page. It's a mattress with a dog on top of it. You know this is a quality company when they have a dog on top of a mattress. I got to tell you, it's a quality company. You know how much I like dogs, right? And, there it is. Just click on that, and that takes you to our special page at Casper Mattress. Again, welcome new sponsors for tonight's broadcast, Casper Mattress, CasperMattress.com/CFP-radio, HagmannandHagmann.com. Click on the link. And I'll tell you about my experience about that later. But anyway, before any of that, got to tell you, this has been a tremendously great but busy day. I don't know about you folks, but we have been really running around. I know that last night's show really generated a lot of interest. We had 3 callers right in a row, a gentleman and then a woman and another woman, but all 3 fantastic callers in the third hour, and we have at HagmannandHagmann.com an edited, a cleaned up version. The sound's cleaned up and everything. It's at Hagmann.com. If you missed last night's show for whatever reason, definitely go to HagmannandHagmann.com and click on the audio file there for the story.
Isolated audio of the caller,
right?
Just specifically the caller. And it's very touching and moving and inspirational.
Yeah, and it actually set records in terms of response. I don't think we've ever gotten as many emails about a single caller than that one. And I just want to tell you that, now that's not to minimize any other caller, not at all, but just to say, wow. That really resonated with a lot of people. A lot of people out there said, I can relate, and I understand. So it's interesting. Once again, we'll be sharing more about that later as well. But we've got a lot of stuff to get into tonight. Let me ask an opening question here, though, kind of setting the stage for tonight. Here's the question. When will when will things be? When's the pin going to be pulled? When will enough be enough? When will people say I can't take it anymore? In terms of what's taking place here in the real world, and let me explain what I mean. I've had a couple of conversations yesterday with my. We have, of course, folks, you know that we have an investigative business, but trying to wrap that up, but still have a corporation and still do consulting, and still there's a number of things that we do. But so we had, and because we're a corporation, you can't go to H&R Block, right? I mean, so I've got a tax man, CPA, who does our taxes, our corporate taxes, and I was talking to him, and for a while yesterday, and then some parts of today as well. But my question to him was, what are you seeing with respect to the insurance, the penalties that people have to pay this year for uninsurability? And he says, oh, people are very angry about the tax situation, the penalty situation. And I said, how angry? Well, very angry. But again, how angry? Are they angry enough to get off the couch and turn off the television set and to march on Washington? And he chuckled and says, I don't think so. And then we were talking about Social Security at age 65. And he looked at me and he says, you know what? And I'll be perfectly honest with the audience. I don't have 401ks or IRAs or MIAs or whatever, right? Being self-employed, I probably should have. That's a result of my fault, lack of proper planning. So how many people are in that position? All right. Now, asking yourself that, let's look at Social Security. And I get aggravated when people lump Social Security or call it an entitlement. Do you? I mean, because I remember when I was 15, or 16 actually. Well, all right, if you want to know the truth, I lied about my age at 15. I said I was 16 in order to get a job at an ice cream stand. This is back before they did all the checks and, all this stuff. Somehow it worked. I don't know exactly how, but I remember getting my first paycheck, and I know that they took Social Security out. Now, I don't know if you can get away with that today. It was a long time ago. So, I mean, about lying about your age and stuff. But I've been paying Social Security for quite a while, right? And as I'm sure a lot of you listeners have. So the question I had for our accountant was, well, what about Social Security? How long will that be around? He said, that'll be around forever. I said, really? That's good to know. It makes me feel better. And I asked him, well, how is that? He said, well, can you imagine the riot, the revolt that this country would have on their hands if, in fact, it wasn't? If they took it away? And I said, yeah, I can. And there was like a seemingly vast disconnect there between what my accountant was saying and the reality, at least reality as we see it. Just imagine, because I asked him too. I said, well, hasn't the Social Security benefit or the Social Security fund been raided and raped and pillaged by the people in Congress and the money spent? And well, yeah, but it'll always be there. And I asked him, how can he be so sure? Well, it's always been there. So I said, because it's always been there and it's there now for people today, you're basing the fact that it's always going to be there on the fact that it has been there so far? Well, sure. Circular logic. Now, I'm a friend of. We're friends in addition to having him do my corporate taxes, but we're friends. And I said, "Do you really believe that? Do you believe that everything is fine?" He said, "I don't believe everything's fine, but I believe that the moment that someone touches the Social Security, that there'd be a march on Washington." And I asked him if that was the tipping point. He said, "Well, that would be one of mine." And I asked him a few more things, like what else would be? What else do you think could be that point in time when the pin is pulled? I kind of want to hear from you folks. What do you think? What do you think the tipping point will be? Do you think it'll be one thing or a series of things? Do you think it'll be external or internal or both? I'm kind of interested to hear what you've got to say about that. Both of us, Joe and I, are interested. What scenarios have you been tossing around in your head? Because we've had people come on here and say, "Well, it's going to be the economy," and people saying, "Well, it's the illegals coming up from the south, from the southern border," and then we've had. Joe, it's just been, there's so many scenarios. I don't think we've ever been more vulnerable than we are today. And from an ideological standpoint, ladies and gentlemen, don't you think, just by, everyone in your, unless you've got an exceptional family unit, isn't there grave and significant ideological differences between you and other family members? If you're listening to this program and other family members are not, aren't there stark, striking differences, ideological differences between you and other family members? I dare say there are. And I remember back in the when I was working with as an emergency medical technician and going through the paramedic pilot program here in my community and working fire rescue with the fire department, I do remember the Carter years and the gas lines and OPEC and all of that. Remember that? Remember the misery index and now Joe obviously doesn't remember this, but and perhaps many listeners don't remember this. But I remember talking with my boss at that time, and this was a private, not a municipal, but a private ambulance and rescue service. Now, the fire department was not, so I spread my time between the two. But I remember my boss on the private side saying, "We're in for it. We're in for a civil war." And this is back in during the Carter years. And here it is now, well, what is it, almost 40 years later? Not quite, but close enough. And it hasn't happened. Now, is that by the grace of God that it hasn't happened? Is there a hand of protection over this country? Or is it because it never will happen? Because it hasn't happened in modern history, it won't happen. A lot of people are basing future events on past performance. And I think we can throw that out the window. So tonight, we're going to be talking and asking you what you think the tipping point might be, or the contributing factors into the takedown, and if it's going to be orchestrated or chaotic and random, or both. Or is that relationship symbiotic? And in addition to that, we're going to be talking about we're just going to be talking about the current news items and how they fit into this puzzle, this larger puzzle. We have, at this point, a divide, an ideological divide, a societal divide like no other. If you look at the disparity income-wise, it's growing. The middle class has all but been destroyed. The ideological divide between Marxist, progressive, leftist, whatever you would like to call them. Now I'm talking population, not politicians, population. So the ideological divide between the Marxist mentality and the conservatives has never been greater, ever. Even back during the Carter years, there seemed to be some level of civility, and the entire model wasn't as far left as it is today. A Republican today would have been considered a liberal 35, 40 years ago. Everything has changed over the last 3-4 decades, and we're seeing an exponential rise. And I think you'd agree with this. We're seeing an exponential rise, an accelerated rise of tensions from within. It's kind of like when you fill a balloon with water. And pretty soon, if you don't let some of the water out, it's going to burst. Now, will that happen, or are we going to spring a leak? Will the balloon burst like, bang, and you're going to have water everywhere, or is it going to spring a leak here and there, and suddenly you're going to have just a mess of water everywhere? Well, we'd like to hear from you. What about the foreign element? We know that there's a lot of stuff taking place today, a lot of foreign infiltration, I should say, into the government, into the White House, into Congress, into high levels of faith. And before I go, or before we get into the program, I just want to toss something out to you here. It's interesting because Paul McGuire, and I quote him often, and I talk with him about him often. Remember the social movements of the 60s and of the 70s, representing this rising culture. Mm-hmm. The New Age back then. And I remember, too, my mom being very upset about all that. Well, today, Joe, the very people, and everyone knows this, but the very people who were involved in that New Age movement, in that hippie counterculture, as Paul McGuire calls it, they're in power today. And they've been in power, really. If you want to identify when that began, perhaps you can go to November 3rd, 1992, when America elected or selected, a man was selected to be the president, Bill Clinton. He had admitted openly he smoked pot, known to dodge the draft. He had questionable sexual morals. Certainly he espoused the sexual morals of the counterculture of the 1960s, the anti-establishment flower children, we'll say, of the 60s. They entered the halls of power really in earnest and in big time in the 1990s, and politics, of course, was never the same, at least in that respect. Now, if you look at what was conceived, what was birthed, what was born in the 1960s, or maybe a better way to say it, what was conceived in the 1960s was actually born in the 90s. And what you see is people with massive changes of consciousness that affected world change, and they are affecting world changes. The change has already occurred. Americans right now, you and I, or not, maybe, no, I shouldn't say you and I, but the majority of Americans not only tolerate things like abortion, homosexuality, rampant divorce. This happened because the religious consciousness of America has changed. And, it calls to strengthen the family, to clear the streets to rid the streets of crime. And I'm not talking about, I'm talking about crime, the crime that that there's the laws, I'm talking about assault and rape and murder. It calls to, rid the streets of that kind of crime, or even to make sex more sacred and abortion rare, if not just outright illegal, except in, just period. There's no except. To build the family up, to build up educational standards rather than cram this Common Core down people's throats, those calls are ignored by the very people in power. And you have to, the way I looked at this, and it really, light bulbs kind of began going off when I started researching, and this is kind of a bounce off of yesterday, John from Hollywood, talking about the satanic culture of Hollywood, and I kind of forced that in, I forced that subject, or Joe and I did, and he'll talk more later, but given his position, it's extremely dangerous for him to talk. And he might say, well, no one knows who he is. Well, that's true, but still, maybe someone might hear his voice, and even the accusation is troublesome. But all of this, the calls for reform are not being heard. Never in my life have I believed so much in Steve's statement, you cannot fix spiritual problems with a political solution. All right? Steve Quayle said that.
Yeah.
And it's never been more true. And
no, that's you can't put it articulate it in a better way, because it is absolutely the heart of the matter of so many of the issues that we are facing today. They are our spiritual problems, yet, and you can substitute political for anything. You can't solve a spiritual possession problem with a political solution or a doctor's prescription. It's a spiritual problem. It needs a spiritual solution.
Exactly. Yes.
We got a lot.
I just hang on one second here before. Hang on a second. Let me just. Because if I don't do this now, I'm absolutely going to forget about this.
Okay.
All right.
I'm intrigued.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure I want to get this right. Correct here. All right. You know what? Let me skip this, only because skip this for right now. I received an email from, I know it was a male, it was a gentleman who wrote me about, we were talking about the Clinton just now. I was referencing Clinton coming into office in '92, and the Clinton power structure. I received an email today, or I think it was yesterday. I read it this morning, about 5 o'clock this morning, and I was going to respond to it. And actually, I put it aside. I printed it out, put it aside. It's my office, and I can't get to it right now. And I thought maybe I could find it here in the meantime, but I don't have it right handy. But this emailer said some very interesting things about things not being what they appear to be when it comes to Clinton and the people who are taking him to task and the people who are seemingly trying to vilify, or seemingly saying, okay, we're going after Hillary Clinton. And this emailer had made some extremely intelligent, extremely the research was fabulous, and the points he made were astounding. And I when I read that, I thought, could it be? So the reason I bring this up now is, number one, everything that we're seeing today, at least in my view, Joe, and we spoke about this today, but everything we're seeing today is not what it really appears to be. And I would urge everybody, if somebody tells you the sky is blue, it's a cloudless sky, or if somebody tells you, regardless of what they tell you, please verify. Trust, but verify. Or put your trust in people that you believe can, that have a track record. Only because there's a lot of, this emailer had said, there's a lot, it appears that there are a lot of people out there who are trying to deliberately stoke the fires in such a way that it's going to be used against us, by us, against us. In other words, we're going to be fragging everybody. And I'm not talking about any one situation. I'm talking about the political and social, the ideological landscape and environment. I'm not talking about any one situation. It was more of a broad statement, but it had to do with the upcoming elections in 2016. And because people are getting smarter, I guess I'll just cut to the chase, because people are becoming more aware and sensing that there's something not right. The ballot box is not necessarily, it's questionable. Then they've got to, their show has got to be a little bit more convincing. And I thought, wow, that's pretty profound. But the, for example, the background or not accusations, but the research on, for example, Hillary Clinton, as an example, will be used. They're going to be coordinated attacks, but coordinated with the other candidate, or at least when I say with the other candidate, both sides pulling the strings of the same. Both sides are going to be owned by the same people, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and everything is going to be a much more this particular election, because they're looking at us as being more awake. They've got to convince us more. It's like when you watch a movie today, a black and white from the 1950s, and the special effects. Well, you know what I mean? We're beyond that. No one's fooled by the special effects of the 50s and 60s, or even the 70s, or even the 80s. So they have to step up their game and use different technology and different stuff for today. This is how it was explained to me in this email, that really, because we're getting more astute, collectively they've got to up their game and make changes. So when we look at it, we're somewhat convinced, maybe not entirely, but somewhat convinced that it's a free and fair election, or accusations being made are just, being made by Looney Tunes, sort of like Barack Hussein Obama. Too many people, where we're at today, too many people ignored and gave a pass to those who did not question Obama, his bona fides, who did not question his absence from Colombia, who did not question his lineage, who did not question his allegiance, and who did not question George W. Bush for not questioning the very same things I mentioned. They gave George W. Bush a pass, didn't they? Because you see, if I was handing the keys to the country over to someone, you doggone better know that when I hand those keys over, if it were me, I'd know who I was handing them over to. Now, I don't. Elections aside, if I thought for a moment that if he was going to use our country and run it into the ground purposely, if I was not a co-conspirator in that, I would be yelling from the rooftops and pounding and screaming and saying, "Wait a minute! There's something horribly wrong here." I would not just passively and quietly go off and stock my library and ride my horse and pet my dog and chop wood and pitch baseballs and write a book and talk a good game. Would you? I don't think so. That right there should prove collusion. And that concludes my opening statement.
Fantastic.
All right.
Good job.
Actually, you know what? When I sat down, I have talking points written out. I didn't touch one of those talking points.
As usual.
Yep.
As things usually go. Want to put this out there so we can keep an ear close to the ground. Maybe the chatters out there or anybody in earshot with an email can send us a verification. There's reportedly some kind of explosion that happened near a military base or in a military base in California. Just heard that, and there's some Twitter chatter about that.
Twitter chatter?
Wanted to make sure that, wanted to see if there was anything to that and know what's going on tonight. We can get into, and are going to get into, a number of things, one being your calls, probably halfway through the show or the last hour, but we do have a lot of news to get into, from Obama seeking the war powers to the Federal Election Commission's considering regulating online political speech, to new orders from a judge, U.S. judge orders in Alabama, to license same-sex marriages after it was put on hold for an appeals decision. We have news from the economic news, from taxes being collected in record numbers. The feds collect record number of taxes. To news about welfare. We have, I think, 39 straight months now of 46 plus million welfare recipients and rising. There are a lot of things going on today, and we'll start with the war powers. And I want to start with this article. It's from the New York Times. In a Starbucks today, after a doctor's appointment, I was reading this article in the New York Times, and I was struck by the first paragraph of the article because it was contrary to everything else in the way I've heard this argument laid out. This is what the article says. The title is Obama's Dual View of War Powers Seeks Limits and Leeway. In seeking authorization for his 6-month-old military campaign against the Islamic State terrorist group, President Obama on Wednesday did something that few, if any, of his predecessors have done. He asked Congress to restrict the ability of the commander-in-chief to wage war against an enemy overseas. Let me repeat that.
Wait, what?
He asked Congress to restrict the ability of the commander-in-chief to wage war against an overseas enemy.
Oh, who? You better start
from the
top
New York
here.
Times
Okay.
article. Okay. In seeking authorization for his 6-month-old military campaign against ISIS, Obama did on Wednesday something that few, if any, of his predecessors have done. He asked Congress to restrict the ability of the commander-in-chief to wage war against an overseas enemy.
What am I missing here?
No, I went through the same thing reading this article on the actual New York Times front page. It was the front page on the right-hand side, top story, basically saying that Obama is asking Congress to limit his authority in war, when we know from articles yesterday, Obama's fresh asking of war powers is a large-scale, talking about ground invasion, and it is the first time that the Congress has been asked to change or act on a war powers vote in 13 years. And if I remember correctly, I'm looking for the exact quote, but he goes on to say that these operations might not only be focused and centered around the Islamic State, but anybody who was, I don't remember the terminology, anybody who was similar or appeared to be similar or on the side of ISIS would be in danger of being perceived as the enemy.
Yeah, I get it.
I can't. I don't know where the article is.
Well, here's my thought on this, real quick. First of all, I agree that we should not be entering into foreign entanglements without congressional approval, or we should not be bombing other countries, or there should be a state of declared war, as stated by the Constitution, okay, or as constitutionally, as delineated by the Constitution. Period. All right. So, having said that, it's curious to me. Obviously, the motives of Obama, I would question him extremely, but it's curious. Don't you find it curious that here you are sitting in the most powerful, arguably the most powerful chair in the world, and you're telling the congressional body, "Hey,
take my power away."
Yeah, boy, I don't have the willpower not to strike, so take it away from me. So I have to come to you to act, and that certainly sounds like a pretty self-serving type of.
Yeah, the article continues. It says the proposed legislation Mr. Obama sent to Capitol Hill would impose a 3-year limit on American action that has been conducted largely from the air, while allowing special operation commandos and other limited missions. Would rule out sustained large-scale ground combat. It would also finally repeal the expansive 2002 congressional measure that authorized President Bush's Iraq war. Even as Mr. Obama proposed some handcuffs on his power, he left behind the key to those shackles should be he or his successors decide they are too confining. That sentence is twisted as it sounds because it's written that way, basically saying that if he feels constrained by the laws, that he should have the ability to change those based on his will. But it goes on to say, well, his draft resolution would rescind the 2002 authority. It would leave in place a separate measure passed by Congress in 2001 authorizing the president to conduct a global war against al-Qaeda and its affiliates. While that is still the law of the land, Mr. Obama and the next president would retain a wide latitude to order military operations in the name of fighting terrorism. So, in the beginning of this article, it states how this president, like few, if any, of his predecessors before him, asked Congress to restrain his power of war over enemies, fighting enemies overseas. Yet 3 paragraphs down the article, it goes on to state that the power of war needed to be expanded to global operations of fighting wars in the name of fighting terrorism.
But Joe, everything he's done, he has ignored the Constitution, yet in this particular case, this is the first thing that he's done where he's asked for congressional approval or conform to congressional mandate, conform to a constitution, instead of playing this mini dictator role, and does just what Valerie Jarrett and George Soros and want via executive order. Now he's trying to, seemingly, at least it seems this way to me, he's trying to protect his Muslim connections by putting it before a do-nothing Congress, don't you think? I mean, at this point, we've got a virtual do-nothing Congress at best, but now we also have him going to Congress as well to kind of be associated with what you're saying. Congress, or Obama asked Congress yesterday to authorize military force against ISIS. But I guess that kind of plays into his what you were talking about. That would essentially prohibit any large-scale invasion by using U.S. ground troops. And it would also have a sunset clause in there limiting various operations. And, man, this is really getting kind of freaky. This does remind me, Joe, of when you study history, you look at the actions of Hitler, and I know people will say, "Oh, there you go." You know, as soon as you mention Hitler, it's game on and game over at the same time, because any comparison between Obama and Hitler or any American leader and Hitler automatically precludes a person from being taken seriously. But Sounds like the same template here, or a similar template. It really does. Well, later on, Hitler got obviously much bolder, but wow. So anyway, yeah. So I mean, here the Congress as well as Obama. Go back to Bush HW. Okay, blow into Iraq. The Iraqis out of Kuwait blow into Iraq, really under false pretenses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then they come back and after post 9/11. Under additional false pretenses, go over and blow into Iraq again.
And going into Iraq after 9/11 being the pretext to go into Iraq, what they did in Iraq really set the stage for the whole state of the Middle East that we see today. The chaos, the unrest, the overthrow of the government over there, the Arab Spring, all that is a result of what happened in Iraq, the policies that were implemented by people like John Brennan on the ground in their little, what was that area, the green zone that they set up in Iraq. They went against what George Bush said they would do by dismantling Saddam Hussein's army. They dismantled the government of Iraq, which they said they wouldn't do, and then they divided the country along religious lines, beginning the Sunni-Shia fights, and these began to be violent. It started very slow, and it intensified as the division continued to be propagated by our government and by our military and our policies, and it spread across country lines, and this is the result we see today. The end result, yet to be seen, will be a world war of some kind. I saddened to say, in my opinion.
Well, let me ask you a question, because and this goes out to the listeners as well. Remember Abraham Lincoln in your studies, if you studied history. Or is this not giving war powers essentially in a kind of a backhanded and convoluted way? Isn't this giving war powers consistent with the War Powers Act that would essentially allow him to extend or use that very act against us here domestically? Now, I understand about all the other break walls for doing so, except that this renegade in chief doesn't have he doesn't care. So by doing this, is this kind of a backhanded, convoluted way of giving him the ability to unleash U.S. forces? I mean, yeah, in the United States?
Theoretically and legally, based on what's laid out and what has been laid out through the NDAA and the Patriot Act, yes, exactly. I mean, what you said is exactly a scenario that we could find ourselves in. The president could use the authority of war to fight terrorism globally as a pretext to fight domestic terrorism inside our own borders.
And people have to understand, too, Lincoln was not he was not a good man in terms of he didn't follow the Constitution. He was not a constitutionalist. He was not a good man. And we can get into all of the things he has done. There's a book called Lincoln Unmasked, and if you read the history behind it, you can see what Lincoln has done. And this, to me, and of course, he was his role in the Civil War. You've got to understand that as well in the context there. But that's beyond the scope of this conversation. But wow, okay, we're actually seeing maybe. Wasn't there something about Obama talking to Lincoln or something, or talking to the bust of Lincoln, or the bust of Lincoln talking to Obama, or Obama having a smoke with Lincoln? I don't know, but there was something to do with Lincoln. So if you study what Lincoln did, man, this doesn't sound good. And using the War Powers Act here domestically, I think could very well be. Oh man,
yeah. I mean, the enemy is global terrorism under the guise of ISIS right now, or ISIL, as the president will call it. And it goes on to say it is essential It was that essential contradiction that Mr. Obama's proposal that shaped the contours of emerging the debate in Congress. One side, Republicans said the president had outlined too many limits on the war against the Islamic State, known as ISIS or ISIL. On the other side, liberal Democrats said the residual power of the 2001 measure and the language of Mr. Obama's own proposal were so elastic as to leave the president virtually unfettered. That essential contradiction at the heart of the president's proposal captured the one that has characterized Mr. Obama's own 6-year management of the Situation Room. He repeatedly aspired to end the nation's perpetual war footing, as he terms it, and curb the president's power to use force, even as he availed himself of the authority he inherited from Mr. Bush and then expanded it. In a way, it's been the story of his presidency, said Jack Goldsmith, a Harvard Law School professor who, as a top lawyer in Mr. Bush's Justice Department, was at the heart of the last administration's debates about presidential power. He's been talking during his entire presidency about wanting to restrain himself, but in practice he's been expanding his power. Mr. Obama's efforts to define boundaries to war power, even with escape hatches, turns presidential history on its head. Presidents typically resist congressional encroachment and assert the broadest possible interpretation of their ability to order the military to combat. Harry S. Truman sent troops into bloody battles in Korea without a congressional approval or a congressional declaration of war. Lyndon Johnson proposed no time limits in the Gulf of Tonkin resolution during Vietnam. Bill Clinton waged the war of Kosovo without any congressional authorization. The measure authorizing 2 wars fought in Iraq by George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush were notably broad. Presidents of both parties have refused to acknowledge the constitutionality of the War Powers Act of 1973, a post-Vietnam attempt by Congress to rein in presidential authority.
Well, is this potentially a look or a strategy for 2016? Assuming we have elections, right? And let's assume that to be the case. I mean, period. All right. And it's Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush. That's where my money is. The potential might be Hillary Clinton and Scott Walker, although I believe that they're going to do, I think the Republican Party is going to do a real bad, kick Scott Walker out. So I think it's going to be Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush. So could this be a strategy for the 2016 election? And are we looking at this a little bit more limited? Could this very well be that extra charge in the bullet that is needed to take Assad out? Because that's still the end game objective here, is to destabilize Syria, to take Assad out. And Israel is helping. Israel's on board with this as well. Interestingly, which I find that a difficult pill to swallow myself. Why take Assad? I mean, that's a devil you know, and we've seen how well destabilization worked in Libya and other countries. There's something bigger at play here. I think that we really need to keep our eyes on this. You're looking at having to, if Assad is taken out and we go to war in Syria, as I always said, Syria will explode as opposed to implode. We saw the implosions of Iraq. We saw the implosions of Afghanistan, Libya, and other countries. Syria is going to explode because of the relationships, military, economic, and others, between Syria and Russia, Syria and China, and other players as well. But I really believe that Obama at this point is using ISIS as a method of expansion, not of just his war or powers, but his expansion and powers and authority, but his expansion to spread chaos and to destabilize and take out Assad. I think we have to keep our eyes on that, on Syria. That's good, very good starting point here. I do believe that there's much going on with this.
Absolutely. Piece from yesterday, I wanted to hit on this, continuing to speak about Obama. Mark Levin, I tried to upload this audio, and for some reason this is the only YouTube audio clip that it just completely shut down the audio, or the program I used to convert the YouTubes to audio clips. Mark Levin made a statement, Obama trying to protect the Muslim faith, seeking to destroy Israel. I'm going to read the transcript of what he said because I cannot play or upload the video.
Okay.
He says, radio host Mark Levin says, there you go, randomly shoot a bunch of folks in a deli in Paris. Do you know why he says that? He's trying to protect the Muslim faith. And he's referring to Obama saying that Paris attacks are random. Do you know why he trashes Christians over the weekend at the National Prayer Breakfast? He's trying to protect the Muslim faith. Do you know why they censor themselves and change the language in describing the enemy? Because he's trying to protect the Muslim faith of his father, the Muslim faith he was around for far more than the traditional Christian faith. If that's Christianity they were practicing in Jeremiah Wright's church, then I'm a Christian and I am Jewish. I don't think Barack Obama was ever taught about Christianity. He was taught about radicalism through a cereal box preacher camouflaged as a church. He was taught extreme radicalism rather than faith. The one faith he had exposure to was his father's faith. What's he saying? I'm saying exactly what I'm saying. I don't need interpreters. I don't need spoke idiots like Ernest and Paskey to say what I'm saying. So Obama has no affinity for Islam, far more than Christianity and Judaism. No question about it. No question about it.
Wait.
Obama has
no affinity?
An affinity.
An affinity. Okay.
I'm not surmising. I'm not implying. I'm listening to him. I'm watching him. He's telling us this. If organized religion, if organized Christianity were going through content slandering Muslims and Jews and anybody else who wouldn't agree with them, I think Obama would point that out. Obama already is seeking to destroy Israel. That's right, I said it. He is seeking to destroy Israel. Yes, he does. He seeks to destroy Israel. This I am now convinced of. And that is a transcript from the audio that I wanted to play from Mark Levin, but it would have sounded much better coming from him and the tone he uses.
But I don't think people are seeing, I really don't think, very few are seeing the bigger picture here.
And we talked about the Muslim Brotherhood in the White House, the presence of the Muslim Brotherhood in the White House. This goes along with what Mark Levin's saying. When Obama's trying to protect the Muslim faith, as Levin states, he's talking about the terminology of not calling it, extreme. What's this terminology? Extreme Islam, or they're trying to say it is not Muslim or extreme Muslim,
right?
Because Muslims would not do that. In theory, I do agree and understand with what they're saying, just like if a Christian were to shoot somebody and kill somebody under the guise or for a Christian purpose, they are obviously not Christian. They just say that they are Christians, and nothing in our religion states to kill somebody. I understand the point he's trying to make, but what they're trying to do is because, and through political correctness, and because of the tone that they're trying to set, they are not trying to paint a broad picture by saying, the Muslim religion is a religion of terrorism. It's a religion of peace. They're trying to separate the religion from the religious ideology that is sparring these attacks.
Okay, which is, you can't really do that in the case of Islam. You can't do that when it comes to Islam, and we've gone over this. And for new listeners, you can go back to different prior programs, but you cannot do that when it comes to Islam in this. But Joe, with what you're saying here, with Mark Levin's position, I made a comment that people aren't seeing the larger picture here. If everyone takes a few steps back and looks at what has happened, not just over let's just go over the last, we'll say 2 weeks. Look at what happened. You've got a major news anchor that has been suspended with They're suspended for, 6 months or however long he's been suspended for, Brian Williams. At the very same time, what other changes in the media have we seen? We're looking for a pattern here. Jon Stewart, right? We had kind of joked about that and said, oh, really? Is this true? Jon Stewart going out. And then, folks, did you happen to catch Gallup polls making a mention, or not Gallup, but Jim Clifton, the chairman and CEO of Gallup? Did you happen to catch his comment where he told the media that he was worried that he could suddenly disappear, for example, or he might not make it home or whatever? When he was talking about the unemployment figures, the key here is to look at the personalities, the key people in the gatekeepers of information. We know that, for example, Brian Williams is a gatekeeper of information. We know that Jon Stewart is a gatekeeper of information to the extent that that's entertainment, of course, but look at how look at how popular he is among the younger crowd, and look at the statement made by the Gallup guy. All right, so right now we're seeing two people being changed out. One saying, "Hey, I don't want to get disappeared," basically, and now a heightened and curious event with respect to Obama, congressional orders or constitutional congressional mandates. We've seen this before, haven't we? We've seen this before. We've seen change-outs of gatekeepers of information, I dare say, right before military or specific actions, or events, big events. Right before a major event occurs, you need a certain level of loyalty, especially if that event is pre-planned. So all the things we mentioned so far, are we seeing this deliberate draining of the people in power to replace them because of loyalty? I don't know, but certainly we've seen it before, and I think we have to watch for a propagation of disinformation, because usually before some major event does happen, of late, you need the eyes off of that particular event. You need people who know how the information highway works and know where the off ramps are and the on ramps, and they need to. Hey, if they see something funky, they can report on it. If you've got someone more loyal than a Brian Williams, for example, not saying he wasn't, but perhaps maybe something had changed, or Jon Stewart or whoever, but there's something terribly wrong with the timing and with the orchestration here, at least in my view, because I think we have to take a much bigger look at what's going on. For that Gallup comment, the guy from Gallup, Clifton, really bothered me a whole lot. And go back again, look at what the Hitler regime did. And there's world events that we're seeing, including those here in the United States, but world events are not circumstantial. They're not, they're organized.
Yeah.
So, all right.
And we're at the top of the hour. We're going to take a break, but I do have a few audio clips I want to play, one on the economy, another on smart meters. There was a piece up on InfoWars, smart meter surveillance device spying on your home and your family, even telling and reporting back what you are watching on TV. That's a 4-minute audio clip, plus an audio clip I have on the economy that I'd like to play, which talks about the economy's stagnant recovery, non-existent recovery, and what some economists from CNBC see coming down the pike, and it is not good news, as you would imagine, coming right out of the mouth of those who tout the economic recovery's been so good. Tuesday, we will be joined by Stan Deyo. And mark this on your calendars, ladies and gentlemen. Next Thursday, February 19th, we will have author of The Harbinger and Shemitah, Jonathan Cahn.
Jonathan Cahn.
He will be speaking at the Orlando Prophecy and the News Conference with us. He will be down there in Florida. But he will be coming on the show next Thursday, a week from today, to speak on our show. And it should be a fantastic show. So keep that and mark that down on your calendars. Next Thursday, February 19th, we will be joined by Jonathan Cahn. Also, Paul McGuire will be coming up, and a few other speakers from the conference will be joining us as well. We just don't have the dates ironed out, and we will let you guys know when we do. Just a little bit of housekeeping I wanted to bring your attention to. This hour, we're going to continue to hit some news. I'm going to start by playing an audio clip on the economic situation. This was aired on CNBC yesterday. No hike till mid-2016. But listen to what they say about the quote-unquote claimed recovery of the economy by the government. It's a 2 and a half minute clip.
Go ahead.
If you look at the domestic economic conditions, I hear all this discussion about the U.S. economy accelerating. If you look at the GDP number that we're probably going to have in the revised report for the fourth quarter, combine that with the negative report in the first quarter, average growth for all of 2014 is about 2.3%. Fourth quarter over fourth quarter growth will be about 2.2%. That's really where the economy's been growing over the last 5 years. There is no acceleration in underlying economic activity. Nominal GDP growth is running approximately around 4% where it's been growing. Now, we've had a nice pickup in employment in the last couple of months. There's no doubt about that. That's squeezing productivity. The squeeze in productivity is not going to be allowed to go on very long by corporate America, who needs very strong earnings to justify the multiples that they're getting in the stock market. So either we're going to have a decline in the earnings numbers, or we're going to have multiples be maintained by stronger earnings, which is going to mean a slowdown in employment going forward. And I think that's really going to be the limiting factor on the Fed, as well as the deflationary forces that are taking place overseas that we could also import on a stronger dollar.
Wow. That's a very long list of non-ideal situations we find ourselves in.
And we can keep on going.
But what we're talking about...
And we can keep on going.
What we're talking about is being at near zero interest rates, having come through a massive force-feeding of QE into the economy. So, you don't have to have a perfect world to start raising rates. You mentioned deflation, but almost as an afterthought.
Well, I mean, the deflation story is very, very critical, but there's also this wrong concept I keep on hearing over and over again in the financial press about this acceleration in economic growth that isn't happening. Last month, we had a horrible retail sales number. We had a horrible durable goods number. We're likely to have a very disappointing retail sales number coming forward. This month, we've had a strong payroll number. We say everything's great. It's not great. It's running where it's been. It's been the same thing for the last 5 years. There's no improvement in the economy. I do not disagree with they think it's reasonable. However, it's reasonable based on the assumption we're going to have an acceleration in underlying economic activity, we're going to have an acceleration in inflation, and we're going to have an acceleration in wage gains. And I haven't seen any of those basic assumptions come through, so therefore I have to sit back and question whether or not reasonable is based on a forecast or reasonable is based on reality. If I look at reality today, it's not reasonable. If I look at it based on their forecast, it's reasonable. And their forecasting record's been pretty abysmal, and so is the market's forecasting record. And I think that's what's going to show through by the middle of this year. And we're going to be pushing it out just like we've been doing with the Bank of England. They've been preparing everybody for a rate increase for quite some time, too.
Well, there you have it. If you caught what was being said there was going to be a slowdown in the employment sector, deflation, interest rates will remain to zero, it's close to zero, if not zero, no acceleration in economic growth, no good economic prospect or no good future in the economic world at the way and rate things are going with the measures and policies that have been implemented and are the result of what we're seeing now in the economy is a result of the monetary policy that has been used, and the monetary policy is not going to be changed. It's going to continue to be used, and it is going to continue to bring these same results.
Well, just answer one question for me. The only question I've got is, are people believing this?
Believing that there is no economic growth, or believing that there is an economic recovery?
believing that we are not in any type, or believing that certainly not the latter, but the former, believing that, or I'm sorry, let me rephrase this. Are people believing that the economy is just fine or growing?
I would say the average American who, is not awakened to the manipulation, the true nature of the Federal Reserve and our political system, yes, they believe that, and that would be the majority of the public, believe that the economy is fine. It's probably vulnerable. I'm sure they believe it's vulnerable for some sort of, 2008, a lesser 2008 type situation. I don't think they understand that it is vulnerable for a complete crash into a point of no return.
Okay, and this is something that I struggle with as well. For example, websites like Zero Hedge and Silver Doctors, I visit them. I got them bookmarked. I like those websites. I like the writers. Some people say, "Oh, that's baloney," but to each his own. But I guess my question is there a situation here? And let's look at the bigger picture of too many people yelling fire or hey, watch out, things are going to happen, and when they don't happen, this fatigue sets in, and things start going the other way mentally for people. Oh, I've heard this before. The economy is going to crash in 2012, and it didn't happen then, and it still hasn't happened. So you're all just a bunch of fools, and you're basing your information on kind of like my accountant, saying it's always going to be there. So so I mean, I guess are we somewhat responsible for this, or could we be somewhat responsible? And that's a legitimate question I'm asking.
Well, one thing we don't want to be responsible for is to lead anybody into making any kind of rash decisions based on speculative headlines concerning economic doom or collapse. Should we tell people? I mean, it's like telling people there's a storm coming. There's a storm coming. And maybe a storm is a bad example, seeing how
it could be a far off
conditions
storm.
can change. Right. Well, we'll just say, like the flood. The Lord told Noah that there was going to be a flood, a deluge coming, and to build an ark and prepare, and to put his family and the animals in the ark and prepare. Just like Noah knew the flood was coming back then, we know that this economy is unsustainable.
Right. It has to be. I mean,
mathematically, it's a mathematical fact.
Right.
Been proven by economists on both sides of the aisle. So the question isn't when or how it's going to happen. Or when or if it's going to happen. Is it going to happen is not the question, I should say.
It's when.
It's when
and exactly
or how it's going to happen.
Right.
And maybe it might not even be a complete collapse. It might be a reorganization or a reconsolidation into another currency or international type currency system. But yes, there's going to be a change within the U.S. dollar. We know the Federal Reserve is not private. It is in federal in name only. It is owned by private banking interests.
Yeah,
private banking families.
It is private. I mean, it's a private entity. You said not private. It is a private
and
entity.
Its stated goals from its foundation, as G. Edward Griffin writes in The Creature of Jekyll Island, was to create a stepping stone system to a one world currency system, which they have done. And not only have they done that, they've been able to create a system that plunders the real wealth out of the hands of everybody else except themselves through the fiat currency, and using the fiat currency that they print at will to buy up all the real assets from every other average person out there. So they own all the real assets, plunder the useless fiat currency they created and gave it value, so everybody's left holding, nothing.
Right. Well, the reason I asked that question the way
they'll be dependent on this new system because what they had as their known money is now toilet paper.
Right. Much like we use the example of the Weimar Republic all the time. But the reason I asked the question like I did is because I'm sure there are people out there whose family members are saying, see, you said everything was going to collapse. Look at the numbers, and they push. Maybe they'll push a Wall Street Journal in front of them and say, here, look at this.
Paul Craig Roberts, Gerald Celente, Zero Hedge. They do constantly harp on the, immediate impending economic doom. And I don't think it is to create fear.
No.
It is that serious.
Well, yeah.
I mean, the potential's there. All the indicators, all the writing's on the wall. Everything is in place where it needs to be for the worst case scenario to happen. This is why the alarm bells continue to sound. It's a matter of the global controllers and the satanic agenda knowing when they need to pull the trigger.
Okay. Well, you know, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and this might affect, or this might be relevant to a lot of people out there. The gentleman I was talking to bought $10,000. His just about everything he had in the bank of gold and silver. Now, this is a friend of mine. All right, but he bought it all at once, and he bought it at when gold was at its highest and when silver was at its highest. It's not worth $10,000 today, obviously, and that's not a lot. I mean, what he bought could fit in a shoebox, a small shoebox, maybe even a kid's shoebox, kids' shoes. And it's interesting because when we were talking, I mean, he was not angry. He was just curious, or he was questioning, and he said, and this is kind of, and I'm glad he was talking about this. He said, I know in my heart of hearts, and of course I'm paraphrasing here, that this will be worth a lot more than it is today. And he said something that I thought was pretty profound. He said, it doesn't matter what the spot price is anymore, does it? It doesn't matter if the spot price for silver is $17, or if the spot price for gold is $1,100 and some dollars. It just doesn't matter, because at some point you're not going to be able to get it. Okay, and he realized the value. And when I was listening to him, I was thinking, first of all, he's taking it a heck of a lot better than I would be taking it. Right? I mean, and I've heard a lot of people say, "Well, I should have never listened." Well, is it better to be 5 years early than 5 minutes late, or 10 years early than 10 minutes late? And he, as we were talking, he operated at the time on the information. It was his conscious decision to do that, and I think a lot of people are in that position. They're holding on. Now, obviously, not everyone buys, we'll say, $10,000 worth of gold or silver all at one time. What people usually do would be to buy it over a period of years, and then you get into dollar cost averaging. So you might buy 100 ounces at $40. So you might have bought 100 ounces at $40, and then another 100 at $30, and maybe another 100 at $35, and then you know what I'm talking about. So over a period of time, you dollar cost average what you paid for it. But at least, I mean, even him with minimal means. When I say minimal means, he does not have a lot of money. He said, I know its value. So, where was I going with this? Do you know? Was I going somewhere with this? I guess it's everything is kind of upside down and backwards today. And we see the big countries, and we see people going into silver and gold. That now that it's low, I mean, wow. I mean, before my father-in-law became ill, and when he had all of his faculties, he purchased not a lot, but a small amount of silver, and paid a really high premium for it. And I look at him and I think, well, at the time, and very intelligent man, and still, I contend, still is. Of course, he suffers from Alzheimer's, hideous disease, by the way. But there are a lot of people out there, I think, in that position, and a lot of people who have buyer's remorse with respect to precious metals. But at least with my friend. At least he understands that the spot price is meaningless. The value is there, and but it's is it any consolation if you want to sell it? No. I think, Joe, I think you're right. I'm not sure where I was going with that. I kind of got sidetracked here with something else. But you know what, folks? It's I look at it this way. I've got an insurance policy, life insurance policy on me that I've been paying. It's a term policy, and those people who understand insurance understand there's like different types of insurance policies. Basically, two. There's whole life and term. Okay, and I won't get into the differences except to say term usually goes up incrementally, the premium goes up, or the benefit goes down. Whole life, it remains the same, and at some point it's paid off. Whole life is more expensive initially, but as you get older, the premium remains the same. Term, as I said, either the benefit goes down or the premium goes up. Well, now I'm at the age where I'm looking at the premium and thinking, oh man, I probably should have. Boy, if I should have bought whole life, maybe. But would I drop the insurance because now it's no, I wouldn't drop the insurance. And I think that we have to look at gold and silver as insurance. And I think that a lot of people out there, there are two driving factors when it comes to precious metals. There's jealousy. That when I say jealousy, I'm talking about, man, I wish I would have got in when gold was $385 an ounce or whatever it was, right? I wish. Boy, if only I would have done that. And the other side of it is, wow, that just flew out of my head. The other side of it is having it, buying it high, and it's kind of But I said all that to say this. I think that this is a squeeze by the powers to get the weak people to sell off their precious metals at fire sale prices, to convince them that it's not worth anything. And hasn't that happened before? Of course it has. So let's convince everyone that it's a bad buy, that they're not worth anything, and so we'll sell them off at fire sale prices. And you know what? We'll take the hit and then turn the investment, we'll say, into land. Or into, well, that's the only thing I can think of reasonable, I suppose. Let's trade our, however much money we have, significant amount of money, we'll say, in precious metals, and we'll sell it off and use that money to buy land, because land always appreciates, right? Or doesn't in this environment, we don't know. But I think. I think the squeeze is on to convince people, for example, precious metals, gold and silver, that is, and especially silver, not gold as much, but silver is really not a good investment. And what they're doing is the people are selling it off. They are the powers are buying it up. Interesting stuff too about the repatriation of gold and the stories of attempted repatriation or intended repatriation. How is this going to play out? I think it's going to end badly. So all this together, none of this makes sense. If you're saying, Doug, you're not making any sense, well, you're right. I'm not, because none of this makes sense. You've got suppressed prices of precious metals. You've got inflated prices or inflated Dow Jones or the Dow. You've got all sorts of numbers that are coming out that don't represent reality. Is it an inflated Dow Jones, or is it a deflated currency value? See, well, and there's another question too, folks. Great question, Joe. And folks, we ask you this: is it the fact that the U.S. dollar is worth less today than it was a year, 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago, or is it because the price of meat, for example, or do you have to use more of the fiat dollars because your fiat dollars are worth less, or is it because the cost of whatever you're buying has gone up? I would contend it's more the fiat losing its value, but also other factors that create or cause the commodity to rise in price. And I don't think, I think it's both, but very heavy on the former, a little bit on the latter, and more complicated than that. So that's just my view on that. Anyway, interesting how that works. It's so we're living in times like no other, I believe. At least nothing that we could connect with right now.
Yes, we are. And our studio dog just knocked this studio computer offline. Good thing we're connected through yours.
No, really?
Yeah, she came down here and somehow pulled the plug out, got tangled up and pulled the plug out. And then she scurried off. I don't know where she went.
And she's over in the in
the
outer
I'm
office.
dark
there.
Here for a second.
All right.
Just got to boot back up. But
Okay.
I do have some stories on the FCC Internet 322 Internet Regulations page. Also some Federal Election Commission news that we're going to get into. And here we go. Got my desktop back up. Just need to reboot the studio and
sorry,
chat
yeah,
room. I don't know if the chat room goes down or dark when
you're going to make me leave her at home, aren't you? I'm sorry.
No, I love when she's in the studio. Just not when she gets into my food or unplugs our computers.
Well, she actually
here we go. We're back up.
She actually took a one of your paper coffee cups out of the small trash bin that we have yesterday. While you weren't looking, you had finished the coffee and thrown the cup away, and she. I've never seen it. Well, my other Australian Shepherd loved coffee. Never used to let her drink it, but she used to sneak a lick or two during surveillances. And now, Lady, of course, does the same thing. Just likes to lick the coffee off the lid or whatever. But I looked at her, and I was in the studio, and I was watching her walking around with this. It was funny as heck. If I could have had the camera at the ready, I would have taken a picture. But she was walking around with this coffee cup. The bottom, she had her teeth on the bottom part, and the upper part was covering her muzzle. So she was walking around like she was drinking, coffee. It was the cutest thing I've ever seen. But anyway. Go ahead, John. Sorry about that. I was just kind of stretching it out while you pull it through here.
This article I wanted to hit, and give us a call at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. We do have some on hold. We want to get others on hold to hear what's on your minds, anything that you see in your research and analysis. Or any questions or comments, concerns you have, we want to hear from you. 661-244-9839. We'll start taking calls towards the end of this hour. Listen to this. CNN anchor, what he says. Our rights do not come from God. During a heated discussion over gay marriage, CNN morning anchor Chris Cuomo opinion...
Any relation to Mario and Son?
I'm not sure. It says that he... gave the opinion that the inalienable rights endowed to all Americans did not come from God. Cuomo was debating Alabama Chief Justice Roy Moore on the constitutionality of same-sex marriage. Near the end of the back and forth, after Moore argued the rights cannot be handed down by men, Cuomo blurted out, "Our rights do not come from God, Your Honor, and you know that. They come from man. That's your faith. That's my faith. But that's not our country. Our laws come from a collective agreement and compromise."
Oh, all right. So I didn't get that memo.
And it just goes on to say maybe Cuomo flunked his elementary civics class. The opening sentence of the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence clearly affirms we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. It goes on to say it may be more convenient to Cuomo's political philosophy that a select few are empowered to grant rights to the masses, but it certainly is not part of this country's foundation. What's worse is Cuomo's advocating collective rights. He speaks as if every American right can simply be overturned at a whim simply because times change. Sure, freedom of speech was great in 1789, but we've evolved beyond that as a collective society. This is a very dangerous slope on which to tread.
Well, it's obvious. Remember, I spoke earlier about the generation of the '60s, the baby, the hippies, that generation. It's obvious that the destructive generation has really done its work here. Isn't it interesting? They promised freedom, they promised peace and love. At least that's what they espoused. The revolution delivered the freedom of a derailed train and the peace of a beached whale, if you want to know the truth, right? The statistics indeed speak here with respect to the indicators of the social destruction which we're seeing, which this is also not just social destruction on display at CNN, but this religious or spiritual destruction as well. It's a combination of both. We lead think about this, all right? CNN exists in an environment, we all exist in this environment where we lead the civilized world in things like the father's absence from the house, our permissive laws regarding abortion, our permissive laws regarding divorce. Now, you might think, well, what does that have to do with what the unalienable or inalienable rights that Joe spoke about? Well, hold on. The dumbing down of the educational system by the very people who were at the helm in the 1960s, and I defer to Paul McGuire on this extensively. But when you have American households comprised of married parents, well, only 1 in 4 American households with, you're talking about 25% of American households that have married people with children. It's about the same percentage as those born to unwed mothers. Consider back in 1960, there were only 243,000 children living in single-parent homes. Some 33 years later, in 1993, that figure went from 243,000 to 6.3 million. So you've got this extremely abrupt demographic change. Now, getting back to spirituality, does this not speak to the destruction of our Christian culture? Because the 60s movement did not rebel against religion, contrary to popular belief. The 60s, let me say that again, the 60s culture, the people, the hippies, they didn't rebel against religion. They rebelled against the Christian religion. The dust of history has settled enough to see that the counterculture movement of the 1960s, they didn't seek secularization. That was not their intent. Their intent was to radically change the spirituality, to assail Christianity and to replace it with a demonic, satanic spirituality. So, baby boomers, they were considered a generation of seekers. What's the truth? Only 4% of them are truly atheists today or agnostics today. The rest do follow some form of religion, but religion of convenience. Our declining moral standards, well, they're not because we no longer have a religion or a religious inclination, but because we've changed religions. The noble search for expanded consciousness, or at least that's what they thought. Oh, isn't it great to seek a higher level of understanding and consciousness? The hippies. Well, the Eastern mysticism people back in the 60s. What did that spawn? That spawned this twisted, convoluted, satanic, religious hybrid. It's that really has set the stage, at least in our view, for this. Hey, your rights didn't come from God. So I think we've got to, I think we've got to understand. We have to look at history to understand where we're at right now. And you see, isn't it interesting too, when we talk about things like the Tavistock Institute, the CIA MK Ultra, the mind control experiments, when Russ Dizdar talks about the fourth generation of satanic multiples, are we not pushing the envelope for right now? This war within the body of the church. We're seeing it now. We're seeing it now, and it should be transparent to everybody. We're seeing Revelation being played out right before our very eyes, or at least the preface to Revelation being played out right before our very eyes. When you've got people that go on national recognized news programs like CNN and saying your rights did not come from God, Your Honor, Judge Roy Moore, right, for the man who refused to remove the commandments from the courthouse. At least Judge Roy Moore stood for something. Thank God for that. And said, no, and hell no, you're not going to take it out, but of course was forced. But at least because he's still breathing, he's still talking, he's still objecting, he's still showing up and saying, no, we're not going to do this. But how many of us are doing that? Last night, it was a great call right before the Buffalo call. A gentleman called and said, not us, but I mean, his eyes were, he was awakened. A lot of great, all the calls last night were great. But that gentleman last night that called and said, I'm awake now. It's more, the heck with being awake. We're all awake, right? Or at least different levels of being awake. What the hell are we going to do about it? We're going to sit here and type and say, use our keyboard as no, we've got to do something about this. And there's a growing level of frustration as to what to do, which does cause and creates that mental stress. Stress is caused by uncertainty, in my view, of what can we possibly do. And that's why we're trying to, hook up people, like-minded people. But we need to do more. We need to keep talking, and that's why I was talking to Steve Quayle, for those people who don't know who I'm talking about. And he said, sometimes I wonder why in the hell we even do this. And I said, and we talked on air, this week, and I said, I agree, man. I don't know why. And please, this is not about us. This is about the frustration that we all all experience, that exists within all of us. Because it's like you that's listening, and you try to talk to your mother or your father or your son or your daughter or your sister or brother or that stubborn uncle or your neighbor or your coworkers. And suddenly you become the red-headed stepchild of the family of blonde-haired, blue eyes, or whatever children, right? You become very unpopular, and then you get shunned and pushed aside. Remember that call that from the woman in Buffalo, lost everything. But at 70 years old, she's still moving on, carrying on. And that's what we have to do. We have to shout from the rooftops until we're hoarse. We have to keep pushing until we can't push anymore. We have to fellowship at conferences, like, for example, the conference that's coming up down in Florida. Go to it if you can. Let's fellowship. Let's talk about this. The heck with political meetings. Let's have spiritual meetings. And let's use these venues as a springboard to action. And if our church is not, if our pastors are not willing to get on board, then let's see if we can't replace pastors. You know, all politics, there's a saying, all politics is local. I believe all religious movements everything's local. If you look at it from a local level, we can fight on a local level, can't we? If it's a school board or if it's a county council, city council, whatever it might be, we can take that fight on, can't we? Or we can write letters to the editor. I see so many letters to the editor in my home paper that are based on lies, and no one challenges the lies. No one challenges these lies. The reason that we exist today is because no one is challenging the lies. Now, I'm not talking about the lies of personal attacks. I'm talking about the lies about our country. I'm talking about the lies of the politicians, the leaders. No one challenges them. Everyone wants to play partisan politics in the political arena. Well, that's going out the window. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm going to be quiet. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah. By the way, 21 Marines were taken to the hospital.
Was that explosion?
Yeah. Now this is coming in. I don't have independent confirmation on this. That explosion mentioned. William R. Thank you so much. Breaking news. 21 Marines taken to hospital. George Bush Hospital. They say a fire extinguisher caused it. I don't know. I mean, I shouldn't say I don't know. I don't want to sound. We don't have any other verification on this.
Yeah.
Or wait a minute. We do.
We did hear
Desert Sun
reports before the show, and mentioned it right at the top of the show. And if you're getting information, it probably is. There is something to it.
Here it is, right here, real quick, and I'm gonna shut up then. 29 Palms Marines injured in training exercise. 29 Palms, the name of the base. Okay, 22 Marines were injured Thursday while conducting training aboard the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center. 29 Palms, a base spokesman said in a press release. Marines and sailors of the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marine Regiment were participating in an integrated training exercise, 2-15, when a fire extinguisher system located within their assault amphibious vehicle inadvertently discharged. Okay. This is via the desertsun.com, or I should say desertsun.com. It's a Gannett company. How does that happen? Does this even make sense? And hey, a fire extinguisher system within their assault amphibious vehicle inadvertently discharged. Well, I suppose if it's in an enclosed area, depending on the type of system and whatever, and depending on the injuries, they're all in stable condition, so it doesn't sound like it was anything life-threatening at this point. Although this is a early report, so just something to keep our eyes on.
Couple quick headlines, then we'll go to the phones. Federal Election Commission to consider regulating online political speech. The FEC, Federal Election Commission, is holding a hearing today to receive public feedback on whether it should create new rules regulating political speech, including political speech on the Internet, that one commissioner warned could affect blogs, YouTube videos, even websites like the Drudge Report. The hearing is in a response to a U.S. Supreme Court ruling in the McCutcheon v. FEC last year when struck down the FEC previous cap on aggregate campaign contributions from a single donor in an election cycle. Before the decision, individuals were limited to a combined total of $46,200 in contributions to all federal candidates, $70,800 to federal action plan committees. But now the individuals are no longer restricted by aggregate limits, Chief Justice John Roberts said, including intrude without justification on a citizen's ability to exercise the most fundamental First Amendment activities. Anyway, now they are looking to
How would they enforce that? How would they enforce that?
They say here that some of my colleagues, this here chairwoman of the FEC, Anne Ravel, issued a statement in which she complained that the agency was not doing enough to monitor the activity on the Internet, said, some of my colleagues seem to believe that the same political message that would require disclosure if it would run on television should be categorically exempt from the same requirements when placed on the Internet alone. As a matter of policy, this simply does not make sense. Goes on to say, however, the Commission, 3 Republican members responded to Ravel's comments in a joint statement. Despite the Internet's growing importance as a tool for all citizens to engage in the political debate, and notwithstanding this Commission's promise to take a restrained regulatory approach with respect to online political activity, Ravel apparently believes the time has come to impose greater regulation on political speech over the Internet. According to the commissioner, who served as the FEC chairman last year, regulation of content placed on the Internet is a very real possibility. The commission has seen proposals to regulate, even issue advocacy referencing federal candidates that is disseminated on the Internet. That could reach YouTube videos, blogs, and websites like the Drudge Report.
Well, what do we do? And folks, let me ask you this. What did we do before the Internet? I'll tell you what, if I have to, maybe we should go back to the printing press or, the copy machine or the mimeograph machine, right? And just do everything on paper. Why not? I mean, we existed without the Internet, didn't we? And I just wonder how many
show, but we did. Yes, right. We all did.
Of course, but losing the show, you think that's going to shut us up? No, it's going to make me more damn determined.
We'll get a bullhorn, and we will travel the country.
That's right.
You're going to get to
set
up some new traffic and travel laws if you want to keep us out of the public's here.
Man.
But they're going to say on February 26th there will be a FCC vote. It is set to vote on the new net neutrality laws, rules that will, under the auspice of preventing private Internet operations from imposing controls. The political focus behind the push to regulate online political speech has shifted largely to the FEC instead of the FCC. The political affiliation of the FEC chairman works on a rotating basis with 2 major political parties trading off each other. Since each party retains an equal share of members on the commission, any new rules adopted by the commission would require bipartisan support. Another quick headline here. FCC Commissioner, unprecedented involvement of executive branch in our decision-making. A Republican Federal Communication Commission Commissioner, Ajit Pai hosted a press conference on Tuesday to discuss with reporters about his concern about President Obama's proposal to regulate the Internet. Pai cited concerns ranging from the proposal causing heavy-handed FCC regulations on the Internet to plan being a gift to trial lawyers. Under the idea of net neutrality, the president, along with FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler, is pushing the plan forward prior to the February 26th vote on the matter. However, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson appears concerned about the influence the White House may have on the agency's decision-making with his policy. Johnson sent a letter to the commissioner requesting information on the issue, as did the House Oversight Chairman Jason Chavez.
Right.
We certainly want to find out to what extent change of heart was actually his own or whether there was influence by the White House. The FCC is supposed to be an independent agency, so we're trying to find the information. We want to find communication between himself and the White House, his agency and the White House, and see whether he is truly an independent act. Following the press conference, Daily Caller sat down with Pai to discuss the matters and other issues relating to the president's net neutrality. How will content possibly be censored when the government moves in and on this treats the Internet as a utility?
See, everyone was complaining about SOPA, PIPA, ACTA, all the acronyms a couple of years ago when all the outrage was the norm. Don't regulate the Internet. Now, they backed down. The federal government backed down, right? No, they didn't.
They repackaged it.
That's right.
Repackaged it. And as I see we're up against the break here, one more headline. Obama's military force authorization seems to deliberately omit Jews. President Obama's request for Congress use of force against the Islamic State singles out several ethnic groups threatened by ISIS, but oddly does not mention Jews. Despite overt references to Zionists and Jews in ISIS literature and among ISIS leadership, though the document goes to great pains to single out the threat posed by ISIS to Iraqi Christians, Yazidis, and Turkmen, it then leaves Jews conspicuously absent.
That's right, and this don't underestimate.
Levin was talking about.
Don't underestimate the power that this has. This omission has. It's
the anti-Semitism rise we see in Europe, especially in France. The exodus of Jewish people from Europe into Israel is accelerating at a pace never before seen. We sense the refounding of Israel as a nation again. We are seeing anti-Semitism not only in the streets of Europe, but in the streets of the United States. We are seeing it across this Mideast Arab Spring destabilization as and also with the regimes that are backing this uprising, such as Iran, even our good allies, Saudi Arabia, Hezbollah, and everybody else who is anti-Israel that has been against Israel is now unifying under the banner of ISIS to put their hat in the ring and take their shot.
There you go.
And we know, as prophecy says, Israel will be trodden down 42 months.
Huh. Oh, it's the biblical wait. Oh no, I guess that wouldn't have anything to do with the inalienable rights granted by God. But sorry about that. No, non sequitur, I suppose.
Let's take a break.
Yep.
Come back with your phone calls at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. It's the 12th of February. It's a Thursday, 2015. We're going to be taking your phone calls only this hour. We just want to hear from you. 661-244-9839 is the number to call in if you want to join in and share. That's 661-244-9839. We're going to start by going to area code 304. Thank you for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Well, hey, Doug and Joe. I hope you guys are having a good night. Thank you for everything you do and just being strong in the Lord. And I know, but I thank you anyway, because what you guys do every night and what the callers do and your guests, we had church last night, whether people realized it or not, but the Holy Spirit moved through the radio, and it was awesome. So I know it touched a lot of people. And, what we can't do, what he can do. And it just takes one seed. And didn't she really shame you and me?
Yeah, I felt very tiny afterwards. Yes, but in a way, but in a, it's kind of like it's to me, and I'll just say this very briefly. It's like complaining about having a stomach ache when you're talking to a cancer patient. That's the way I felt.
Exactly. I mean, well, she's tasted what she's shown a vision of what is going to happen in America, because we can't, as much as we pray or whatever, God is, it's still going to happen. I'm sorry to say. What's going to happen in Israel is going to happen. What's going to happen here is going to happen.
That's right.
And there isn't a whole lot we can do about it. But we are going to stick together. And you know what? God is, he's still he's never left one of us yet. Has he?
No. We have left him. I know I've left him. I've walked away. On my part, but certainly he's never left me. And you're right when you say, we can't change what is about to happen. We can't change prophecy. The only thing we can hope for is to delay it for the future, or for the for our children and maybe our grandchildren, and repent and have a pure heart in so doing. But we're not going to change what's coming, and it doesn't matter anyway, because we win in the end. That's written. So you're right.
Well, yep, that is nice, but I just want to say one thing for myself anyway. But people don't perceive the days we live in and the times that we are living in. Now you got the Pope. He's going to be here on the fourth Tirad, on the Day of Atonement. And he's going to speak in front of Congress. What's that all about?
Interesting timing, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you think that America is going to get attacked from now until September, people, believe me, don't worry about it. America is not going to be attacked before then. But you know what? After then, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
all.
Anyone who says, we're going to suffer some type of cataclysmic event and sets a date, to me, we got a problem with that, But
we already are, though. We already are.
We're setting time.
All you got to do is go to the store, look at people, look at people out in the street, look at people. I mean, we already are. We're suffering.
Oh, sure.
The people are suffering. We're already suffering.
Point.
I don't know if they can make it if they can make it worse. I know they probably will, but I know they have a timetable and everything. But it just, everybody thinks they know everything, and I would have to be one of those that think I know something, and I really don't know anything either, because I'm still, I'm still
we're all learning,
but I'm watching. I'm watching very closely what's happening.
We are too,
and I know God is too.
Oh, most importantly, and hopefully God, we will seek God, and if we seek Him, pray to Him, ask for wisdom, discernment. What else can we do? And repent above all of our sins, and ask for His. And as a caller said last night, God's grace is sufficient. However, we have to do our part too. Wow.
Well, if I might add one more thing.
Yeah.
I know. When I think of all my blessings that God has given me through, from birth all the way through my whole life, He has given me so much. And when I heard that lady last night, I hear my grandma. She's 95. I talked to her the other day. And the first thing she says to me is, she says, "The Lord's been so good. He's been so good, Phil." And you know what? He has been. He's been so good to each of us.
Absolutely.
And I love that call last night. And like I said, she reminds me of my grandmother, not that take away from anybody else. But I do know this, that God would not have put me in a Luciferian family. He puts who, from wherever He brings them from, He puts the right ones in the right places for whatever reason. And I'm just very blessed to be in the family and the home and the love that I've known throughout my life, and that is just it was the Holy Spirit just moved on me. I'm telling you, if people don't think the Holy Spirit can't move through the radio, it happened.
Oh, indeed it does. Oh, my friend, Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
I just want to say this. You remind me of something that Steve Quayle said. You were talking about a Luciferian position or, environment. It's interesting because Steve Quayle always says, God makes better friends for you than you can for yourself. But there's another half to that. And Steve Quayle says that God takes people out of your life as well for cause, for reason. And sometimes, it could be painful. It could be a very painful process. But if you think about it, yeah. All right, brother. Man, good call. Thank you.
Love you guys.
Love you too.
Back at you, brother.
Have a great night. All right, great call. We're going to go to area code 630. 630, you're up next. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Good evening, Joe and Doug. How are you guys?
Good evening. Very well. How are you?
Well, long time no speak.
Yes.
Phil Kirshner.
Yes, actually
favorite...
my Hebrew name is Pesach, and a lot of big things are happening in my life, a lot of good things. Last year before I came to Illinois, I was in Israel, and I studied under some great rabbis, and I'm not going to go into the faith part of it, but what I will do is go into that I love Christians for their support of Israel. I love you guys with all my heart, and I do a radio show. I will be taking over Arutz Sheva very, very soon, and everybody knows. A few people know why and how I'm doing it. And we're going to redo the radio card, and we're going to be redoing shows. I'm going to put my own show on, of course, and we're going to be bringing back our TNT Dynamite show. And a lot of good things are happening. Anecdotally, they call me Bear Jew at Machadev Shai. I don't know if you heard of them.
Well, wait a second, Phil. Are you going to be with Tamar Yonah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been a guest on Tamar.
I'm actually taking it over. I'm actually taking Arutz Sheva over. You know how already. The entire network will be mine with the servers, and then I'll be adding some.
Okay.
Increasing bandwidth. Yep, and redoing the whole website. Yep.
Is Tamar she's going to stick around, right?
Yeah, of course. She doesn't want to do a show, but I begged her to just for the first season. She wants to help run it.
All right. Well, give Tamar my very best. I've been a guest on Israel
National
I will.
Radio. I love her. She's a great woman. Let me tell you, I've never met a finer Jewish woman than I met in her, and and she has a lovely husband too. Yeah,
wonderful family, and she knows.
His son is still serving in the IDF in the north. He's on the Golan.
Oh, all right. Well, the anti-Semitism.
My prayers are with him always.
You're going to be fighting You're going to be fighting the anti-Semitic movement here that we're seeing.
I had a show about anti-Semitism in the rank and file of the NYPD. I had a lovely police officer by the name of David Attila. He wanted nothing in the world but to be a New York City cop. And for 2 years at the World Trade Center command post, all he got was racism, hatred. They threw lit matches at him and said, "This is how your relatives and you will go, and how you're going to go up."
I heard about that.
When they bring back the ovens. I mean, they did a number on him. They made it so uncomfortable with him.
Yeah, there was a report on that yesterday, Phil, about the cop who was...
Yep.
Yeah.
And Phil, that's a very quiet or very muzzled story. Of course, people have not heard, and I don't mean to take your time up, but I'm going to just for a second here.
Please do so.
There were 3 Muslims that were killed in the Carolinas that were shot to death by a guy. Okay, and people are saying, the news media is controlled. No one's talking about this, but that's correct. Okay, because
they took it a lot more than what's happening to the Jews in France, Europe, and the United States now.
Exactly.
I'm lucky. I live in Naperville, Illinois, with my with my fiance right now. And it's like. To me, it's an oasis. The Naperville police are great. They're 100% professional. you know, and the EMS people are great out here, the fire department, you know. And before I leave, I have to have 2 more surgeries, one on my nose to fix the septum, and I'm having throat surgery called the Taurus procedure, which would robotically remove 2 centimeters of tissue from my palate and then resect it so I don't snore anymore, and I won't need a machine, and my heart will not have arrhythmias.
Wow. Well, that's good.
So I'm going through a bunch of final testing. By March it will be done. By July I'll be back in Israel, and I'll be doing Shabbat duty every time at the Machadef Shai Garrison in Yerushalayim. Well, that's where I earned the title of Air Jew, by the way, because I process all the incoming prisoners, you know, and I also drive the MRAPs, you know, and I have a baseball bat, and I take it when they make a lot of noise, and I bang on the cell doors and yell "sheket," which means "shut up" in Hebrew.
Okay.
You know, I don't hit. I will never hit them with it. You know, I'm not. I don't use excessive force like that or anything. You know, I just tell them shut up. You know, and that's it. You know, bang the cell.
Interesting.
You know, like they used to do in the old days.
Well,
that's where I earned that.
I mean, keep in touch, Phil, and from Israel.
Yeah. Also, we do. Can I plug my show? Can I plug my
show? Let me think. Well, sure, why not? I'm just kidding around with you. Sure, go ahead.
All right. If you go into Blog Talk Radio, Lovers of Zion, you can listen to our shows. We have Jamie Geller of Kosher Cooking on. We had John Wells. We have had numerous major guests come online.
Fantastic. We
wish
you all
we have a couple of celebrities coming. We have the guy from Emergency. We're going to talk about EMS stuff. We have, we had Congressman Joe Walsh on with Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership on. Charles Heller, the former executive director, and he's a talk show host in Arizona as well.
Very good.
So,
wish you all the best with that, brother.
I believe in an armed Jew, like Rabbi Mahaya Kahane said, for every Jew, a 22.
Phil, could you cut your loose?
And to all of you, shalom, and have a good Shabbos.
All right, buddy. Thanks, man.
Great to hear from you, buddy.
Yeah.
Shalom.
It's hopefully we'll hear from him in Israel. A lot of stuff going on, but but I just want to say one thing: the incidence of crimes against Christian churches, the incidence of crimes against Christians because of them being Christians, at least my source, it's the local police detective. Head of the detective division gets the FBI reports. Now, this information is not contained in the FBI reports. It's a separate report. But here, even in this area, there have been, I would say, I'm not sure how many this year, but when I last spoke with him here recently over a separate issue, I had asked him about this, and he said, there's been a lot of damage caused to Christian churches and broken windows, graffiti, and some pretty nasty graffiti, swastikas on churches in this area. And this area is, it's kind of like what would you call it? I mean, it's pretty mellow.
Yeah.
So
very much so.
Consider what New York City's going through. All right.
Minus the snow.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to go to area code 865 next. 865. Thanks for calling. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Hey, guys. It's Pat from Tennessee.
Pat,
how are you doing?
Tennessee. Oh, great, man. It's great to talk with you.
Same here. Connection's something, and it might sound crazy, but what the heck? Here goes. I just think it seems like there's a connection of all these metals being introduced into people's bodies through the vaccines and through, in the Gulf oil spill, the people that were exposed to the Corexit, and I was one of them, had mercury, because the Corexit had the heavy metals of mercury, cadmium, cadmium, chromium, and I had a high arsenic level, but that wasn't a metal. But here's a connection I see. I work in an assisted living with the elderly, and all over the whole winter, I noticed that when these big storms come through, and they're given vaccines for the flu every year, and since my nervous system is damaged from being exposed to the Corexit, I get similar symptoms to them. Like when the storms come through, it's my belief that the towers, and then there's all these transformers, and all the buildings are wired with the cable TVs and all the boxes. Okay. I believe that the high energy that's coming through goes through and into everybody's houses and the buildings. And I've seen this enough there's got to be a connection. The elderly, last week when we had a storm come through, I got a severe headache and I had to leave work. And we had 3 people that had strokes, and we had one that had a seizure. And I have seen this over and over. And the one lady that I talked to, I said, "What happened to you?" And she said, she was watching TV, and she said, "Oh, God, the colors that came through," she said it just did something to her. And I think it's a deliberate attempt to hurt people's nervous systems, kind of to fry our brains, fry our nervous systems. Now, here's the odd thing. I'm noticing more and more on different stores and different developments, there's these little transformers. The wiring's getting thicker. Now, they just wired this assisted living nursing home. It's like a campus with, all more and more equipment. But I went in a couple back rooms, and there's too many boxes that go along with these new little cable boxes that they have on everybody's smart TVs with this little green light. And ever since they installed them, I have seen more. I mean, you don't get that many strokes and seizures and things. And I talked to other people in other, area nursing home stuff, and they said the same thing.
All right.
But here.
Well, if I'm hearing you correctly, the people's bodies have been filled. I don't want to say filled, but there's been this increased level of heavy metals in people's bodies. Then you've got this electricity, this increase of the electrical grid, we'll say. And are you saying that perhaps the electrical grid is affecting the heavy metals within people's bodies?
Yep,
okay,
and I think it's on purpose. I think it's to get rid of the elderly, and I do believe, with the golf, I just happened to, unfortunately was down there and stupidly went in the water, but I think, that was also an effort to get rid of the people in that area so they can just have free reign of stealing the oil and stuff. But, I think it's all done for a purpose, and I think it's to get rid of the elderly. Plus, I talk to the nurses and stuff, and a lot of the elderly are on 20 to 30 pills a day. So who does it benefit? The pharmaceutical companies, right?
Wow.
So it's benefiting all these people. I mean, even in the Gulf with Halliburton and Dick Cheney benefited from that. So like you always say, follow the money.
That's right. And that's a
I've
good
seen
point.
this too much that it's not it has to be a connection. And the other thing I wonder if whether, I don't think it just comes through naturally. I think the system was set up, the electrical grid, the cable systems and all that, to maybe dispense or disperse these charges that are coming through, in the storms, whether it's from the radiation from Fukushima, from the solar flares, I don't know. But it is damaging people that I see. And it gets me every time, too.
When you say gets you, it makes you feel ill and
I get severe headaches, blood pressure goes up, almost could have a seizure if I stayed in an environment like that. I had to come home. Yeah, and the elderly couldn't escape, but that's because, and I think when I called before I told you, I had that exposure, and so my nervous system's fried. Basically, probably like an 80-year-old person. And so I feel the same effects. Now my coworkers that are younger and stuff, they'll get headaches and they don't feel good. Some of them get nauseous when this happens. But to me, it's a definite connection. I mean, I'm convinced of it.
Okay. Well, we'll ask other listeners what they think, because interesting premise. The heavy metals within one's body, the runoff electricity, or the deliberate gridding of the electricity with runoff, affecting people because of the composition of the metals or metals inside. So
but it's like getting tased, kind of, because once you get enough of the metals, like let's say the elderly, they can't tolerate all these flu shots and all these other shingles and all these constant things they're getting. So it kind of frays their nervous systems.
Yep.
And then you deliver almost like these electric shocks at them, and then you're taking them out. It's kind of like a way of getting rid of them.
Well, eugenics is really a big deal here, a big part of the objective, and look, I folks, definitely. What do you think? You heard you heard this potential, this possibility, this scenario. Let us know what you think. And here we are. Somebody who's personally experienced it. So could this be? Did we discover something? So we'll put the question out there and we'll see what they say. We'll appreciate that. Thank you for checking
and look
in.
Around to the wiring. Look at that one now. I'm active.
I got to tell you this. I have seen of late, and it's interesting you say medical facilities. One of the hospitals here in our community or town they've replaced or are in the process of replacing all of their their electrical cabling. I don't know what you would call it. I'm not an electrician, but the rewiring. And it looks like they're putting in these huge, I don't know, they're huge. The circumference of the wires are huge.
Yep. And I think maybe they realize, too, that this strong electrical currents are coming through. But I think and I also think that hospitals and some facilities, and this grocery store that I saw today has this gigantic transformer hooked to the back. I don't know if it's called a transformer, but that's what I'm assuming. And I think they get paid so much for having them in the building, just like the towers.
You're right.
And I think I told you before, I talked to this man who used to be in naval intelligence in town here, and he told me there's a shorter tower near where I live, and I said, what is that? Because it looks so different. He said he said it's radar. He said we used to have that on the naval ships, and we weren't allowed near them. And this isn't put up in a residential area.
Wow.
He said it's a radar tower.
Radar for what, though? I mean, I know what a radar tower is, but for what purpose does it serve, But
yeah, I don't know. He was really seemed serious about it, like he knew what he was talking about, but I don't know. But I don't want to take up any more time. But and I just want to tell you, Doug, I really appreciate your humor. I burst out laughing sometimes, like in public, if I'm listening to it. I was in a laundromat, and you said something about bird poop or something. I just burst out laughing at people. So I enjoy your humor.
Well, I'll never be a stand-up comedian, that's for sure. But hey, if I amuse myself, right? All right. Well, thanks.
Thank you for all you do, you and Joe.
All right.
Thank you. God bless you. You have a great night.
Okay. Right. God bless you too. Bye.
We're going to go to our international line. I'm not sure where this caller is calling from, but we're going to go
never know, right?
The caller. When you hear the beep, it's you.
Yeah. It could
country code maybe 182. I'm not sure.
Or 8. No, it could be just somebody messing around, but go ahead.
Hello, Doug and Joe.
Yeah.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Let me check.
Oh, doing good. Is there a delay in the thing? It seems like there's a little bit of a delay.
Are you what planet might you be calling from? No.
It's through the internet.
Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you guys again, as usual, for all the stuff that you guys are doing and the guests you have on, and that the lady that called last night was just amazing, and God bless her, and I'm praying, and we're praying for her and for you guys constantly, and with what's coming up on this country and the earth. We got to stay in constant prayer. What I was calling about was we're in the last quarter, and I know I've called before, and some things are just everything's just really accelerating. And one thing I was wanting to talk to you guys about, first of all, just to let everybody out there know that's listening, just keep in mind with the things as things get worse, just remember that Satan's just the janitor. Him and his minions are just the cleaning crew that ends up getting rid of the evil on this earth with all the wars that they're going to bring and all the evil people. And just remember, they're just they're not as powerful. It's all a bluff, and it's all just a fake and an illusion. That's all it's Satan and his dominion and his and everybody that works with him. That's all he can do is this bluff. And we need to keep that in mind, because the delusion is going to get real bad here soon. And I think everybody's feeling that. You're just hearing it in the calls. You're hearing it. You're hearing the people calling in, like a caller just a little while ago, saying that people are getting not, I guess, depressed or just feeling down. They know something. The burden's getting real heavy, but everybody just needs to keep in mind that Satan, is really a wimp and just a tool of God's. That God's in complete control, and Satan can only do what that God allows him to do. With everything that's going on, and I know that you said earlier in the show, and I heard some of it while I was driving and everything, and sometimes it goes out when I'm driving. But I heard you earlier saying, what are we going to do about this? And a lot of your guests, what are we going to do? And one of the things, and I've brought it up before in forums and probably on your chat, is that we got to quit playing. Satan and the elite and all of them, they're playing at collegiate level, and God's remnant in the church, especially, is playing at a little league level. I mean, playing in a kindergarten level, and we've got to really up our game. And by that I mean we have to, of course, become very vocal and try to wake up who we can. But, the only ones that we're going to be able to wake up are the ones who have eyes to see and ears to hear. It's not meant for everybody. The gospel's not meant for everybody. It's supposed to be preached to the whole world, but we all know, according to what Jesus' own words, it's not for everybody. He says his sheep will hear him, will hear his voice. So
wait a second. Let's be clear on this, because people might misinterpret what you're saying.
Okay.
The gospel is not exclusion. The gospel of Jesus Christ does not exclude anyone. It is people who exclude the gospel from their lives. Isn't that true?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just another. You're basically just saying it, clarifying it for me. But right. I mean, Jesus has his fold, and his sheep hear him. He said it, and so it's supposed to. He died for the whole world, because John 3:16 says that he died for the world, but for everybody. But the thing is that even when he was on the earth and preaching, he was telling the Pharisees and a lot of people, if you had eyes to see, you would understand who I am. But they didn't have the eyes to see, and they didn't have the ears to hear. They didn't want to hear it. They had already, they were of their father, the devil, and unfortunately, it's in God's word. Unfortunately, wide is the gate, and many will go into destruction, and narrow is the way, to lead to everlasting life. And so we need to make sure to preach to every creature, but also focus on finding those who are who you can tell is seeing the lies of the world, not being fooled by this delusion that Satan's got over this world, and try to find the people, the lost sheep. They were in the fold, or they were originally and bring them back. And so we're supposed to preach to everybody, but also we need to focus on finding the remnant. I mean, there's going to be a remnant on this planet, and unfortunately, it's going to be a remnant of Israel and a remnant of people who call themselves Christians. There's going to be a lot of them saying that, hey, I did everything in your name, and Jesus is going to say, I never knew you. So, we got a lot of that going on, and we just the remnant needs to be getting together now. We don't need to be apart, and we need to really start, like I said, having conferences like the Prophecy in the News conference, and we need to start getting together and talking about some things. And if we really want our voice to be heard, and y'all don't have to say anything, but I'll put it out there with my voice, is that at one point, our founding fathers, they talked and talked and talked, and they tried to convince people, but then and they tried to convince the British government, and then at a certain point they said, we're going to dump some tea, and dumping some tea means we're not, to me, it means that there will be a point in this country for the believer and for people that really love this country to say, we're not going to keep paying. We're not a tax revolt. That will get the attention of those in power, and not just one person at a time going up and getting thrown in jail, but as a whole.
That's
coming
right.
out and not saying, we can come out and say we're done with this, have a convention of some kind, and get together and talk about, we're going to quit paying for ISIS to chop off Christians' heads. We're going to quit paying for illegals to get tax breaks when they're not even over here, when they're not even paying taxes in the first place, and they're getting these tax breaks. We're not going to pay for the State Department to open up an office to promote homosexuality and gay marriage around the world now. I mean, when I saw that the State Department's going to be having, some sort of envoy or ambassador going around the world trying to promote, gay marriage on the rest of the world, the Christians are going to have to say, there comes a time we don't pay for that anymore, because if we keep paying and we keep allowing them to take our money, that is acquiescence. That we're saying that we're saying in our words that we don't agree with it, but in our deeds we're approving of their action and their behavior.
Exactly. But you said it though, and I think the key here is we all have to stand together, and until we do, and until we can get the numbers up. And we can win on the numbers. We can win on the numbers, and there's 535 of these idiots out there, right? I mean, in power,
right.
in D.C. Right. There's 300 and some million here in the United States, right?
Right.
We got them outnumbered, and you know what? They might get some of us, a lot of us, but we got them in the numbers. God bless you, my friend. We got to cut you loose here. I appreciate it very much. God bless you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Joe. Thanks.
Thank you. You have a great night.
Joe, the caller did. I got to tell you this. The caller did say a few things that sparked a couple of things in my head. What I should have done yesterday when I was meeting with my accountant, although he knows me, I should have said my name is Jose Arbusto Menendez. I'm a gay illegal or a homosexual illegal alien. actually coming from Mexico. I've got 16 kids, half Chinese and half some other, and that I'm pursuing a transgendered agenda. I wonder if I would have. What do you think? Oh, and do you think I would have got any breaks? I mean, seriously, and I know that's absurd, but my goodness, we're paying. We need to cut off the money faucets. We really do. I guess that's my whole point. And too bad if I'm offensive. Sorry, and too bad if you think I'm intolerant. Well, I'm not sorry about it, because at some point we've got to take our country back, and we're going to win on the numbers. At some point we have to say, no, we're not going to get groped at the airports, and we're not going to get radiated at the airports, and at some point we have to stand up. And, it might all be for naught, but we can try. We can play our positions. And Kent Hovind, don't forget about him. Erwin Schiff, don't forget about him. These are political prisoners. Prison for life on virtually both of them because of ostensibly for taxes. All right. So, sorry, John.
Done?
I know he was.
No, I'm messing around. Let's go.
No, you folks, he's looking at me like.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
604 area code. Thanks for holding. We are coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Hello, how are you?
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. I'm phoning from Canada.
Hi.
Well, it's about time.
Well, you know what? I very much appreciate your show. And, I speak in the spirit here. It makes me very, very, very sad that people don't see that Jesus is love. He is your loving Father. When people look at the Ten Commandments, the non-Christians, they think, oh, this will ruin all my fun. No, this is a love letter from God saying, look, don't do these things because bad things will happen to you. I'm here to protect you. I'm here to love you. Everything he does is about love. It's not about hate. It's not about chopping off heads. It's about love and wanting to be in that kingdom, And, for me, I'm 50 years old. And my life has been pretty stable. I've always been one of those type of people who like to know what's going to happen in advance. Well, I'll say the last 14 months, my whole life has been turned upside down. And throughout that, the most important lessons I have learned is that, number one, God is faithful. And what's even more important is that God wants an intimate relationship with you. My circumstances would overwhelm me if I looked at them. But I know in my heart God is faithful. I know in my heart God's going to look after me. And you know what? That's all I need. And people every day I hear the GD word, which really revolts me.
Mm-hmm.
I hear a lot of women saying, oh my God, and I often say, okay, well, what God are you talking about? You say it all the time, oh my God, oh my God. I mean, what God are you talking about? And these people, I didn't watch the Grammys, for instance, but I'll tell you this, with their limousines, their air conditioned on stage and everything, if they really think that's what hell is going to be like, or they're going to be with their buddies rich and famous, they've got a sad thing coming to them. They're more deceived than anyone because Satan certainly is going to be laughing at them much harder than anybody else because, they think they're going to earn a place in the kingdom of Satan, and he doesn't care about them. And I just want to say to many Christians out there that, I know I would like to hear a show once on Canada. I know that we've just recently adopted the right to commit suicide. And we're heading down the same paths with the homosexual agenda, with the abortion agenda, and it makes me very sad that people do not have a recent recollection of why God made your nation the greatest nation on earth and our nation a great nation. It's because, you know what, we never had these stresses and pressures before. We didn't. You could leave your door open. Things were fine. People had reverence for God, and it's all for these days. It's just like God. Jesus brings such intense hate when you bring up His name. But if you bring up Buddha, nobody seems to bring up that hate. I don't hear saying people criticizing Buddha and all the other gods. And it's just it's not frustrating. I know He's the true God because of that. But I just want to say that.
Wow.
I just want to say that God's not out to get you. He's out to love you, to help us all. That's it.
Well, He's like a loving Father, but a loving Father also has limits, and we know from the Bible that God has given us many blessings, and those who have squandered them or pushed them back and decided not to accept the blessings and not follow the commandments,
mm-hmm.
and not be saved, not seek salvation through Him, then those people will suffer the consequences. So I understand that God's a very loving God, much like a loving Father, but as a loving Father, carnal, earthly Father.
Oh, he's got two sides. There's no question about that.
He's got his limits, yeah. So, but you bring a very good message to the fold. And you really do. And it's interesting too that what you said about, it's interesting that the name of Jesus incites so much emotion or reaction, I suppose would be a better word, to
mm-hmm.
Christians and non-Christians alike. But Gandhi, not so much.
No.
Muhammad, yeah, okay, not so much, and so on. So there's a reason for that. At least in my view, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, I just hope that people would wake up, realize what they had, turn and change their ways, and myself included. I mean, I'm not any different than anyone else, but I'm just saying that, we have to realize who the source is, reverence Him, and
we have to repent, pray, and we have to spend more time repenting and praying than we do, anything else. And then once we're grounded there, we can go on and we can fight. We can go out and play our positions. I mean, we should do it all simultaneously. We should be like training for the big game, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
We're in preparation for the big game. It's not a game, but you get the idea. So, caller, God bless you. God bless Canada. And
thank you so much.
And thanks, brother. I appreciate that, man. Appreciate the call.
Oh, nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you as well. And I was just kidding about, I was kidding about the accent. I'm just funning with you. So.
God bless you, sir.
All right,
you have a good one.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right.
All right, let's go to area code 617. 617, thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Looks like you can take us out tonight.
Take us out. Wait a minute. Speak for yourself. Go ahead. Don't take us out.
Hey, guys. Hey. Great show. Thanks for doing everything you're doing. Bless you. I want you to get some more callers, as I call every night.
You do, but see, we know you, and we know you're a safe bet. So no, I'm kidding. But no, appreciate you listening, and appreciate your kind words and your fellowship and brotherhood. We really do.
Thank you, my brother. And I can't explain how much Chance, I think it was, and John from American Survival Wholesale, they called me up and talked to me and actually gave me a kind of a thing on the kale shakes and stuff. Really good people. Just really, I'm really happy for all this. And I told you that, and I told them to use me, And I just want to say thank you for all your efforts and everything. And I know you're very humble about it, but we have to bow to the name of the Lord. If I didn't, I think my ears were going crazy last night. But I swear I heard you talk about James Joyce. That's one of my areas of scholarship. He was talking about ALP and HCE and Finnegan's Wake. And I got to go back and listen to that because I don't know what he was trying to say really too much, but that's amazing.
We're up against obviously the close of the program, but go back and listen to Monday's program. He talked about James Joyce, Finnegan's Wake, and exactly what the symbol. What's all involved in that. And I can't do it in the course of a couple of minutes, but it's an extremely educational. In fact, he didn't tell me what he was going to talk about before, but I learned a whole lot. And if you're a scholar on James Joyce and Finnegan's Wake in particular, wow, definitely listen to that.
Yep. Yeah.
All right,
thank you.
All right,
thanks,
brother. Take care.
Thank you. You have a good night. God bless you. Fantastic.
All right, man.
Fantastic callers tonight. Fantastic show tonight. We had a lot of news. We had a lot of callers.
Those headlines you read, or you focused on, are the important ones, really. I mean, if you don't pay attention to anything else, pay attention to what Joe had.
Yeah, we didn't get into the Ukraine situation, but one quick headline here that we mentioned the headline. I'll mention it again. U.S. orders Alabama to license gay unions. A federal judge ruled on Thursday that the local probate judge cannot refuse to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples, potentially adding some clarity to a judicial quarrel that has rolled Alabama for most of the week.
There was complicity there. There was collusion. That was the intent all along, but they had to go through that particular process in order to get that court to sanction homosexual marriage.
There was a ban found on same-sex marriages, and that ban was in turn found unconstitutional. They were waiting for the appellate court to issue an order, and then a judge comes in and, through judicial lawmaking, issues this order to allow gay marriages to continue in Alabama. And we've seen this trend in every state that has had the issue of gay marriage come up in their issue of body of politics, and every time judicial activism has led to the legalization of gay marriage, which is telling about the spiritual condition of the nation we live in and how close we are to it completely falling apart.
I'm going to have to pull rank on you, as Chevy Chase says in Fletch, one of my favorite movies. But we can't call it gay marriage. We really should not call it gay marriage, only because it's not gay.
Civil unions.
No, we must call it what it is. It's homosexual.
Homosexual.
Well, it's homosexual, unions. Not gay. But the fact is, it's really it's the changing of the language. It's intentionally done, and we have to recognize how we are being managed through language. It's not gay; it's homosexual, and it's even the homosexuals when we say queer, for example, there are homosexuals that prefer queer, and there are queer clubs. Look at some of the TV shows, or one of the TV shows. What is it, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, or something like that? They actually wear it as a badge of honor as opposed to anything else. But the point I was making, we have to make this one of the show rules. We cannot use gay in place of homosexual. It's not proper language. So anyway.
With that, it's been a great show. We'll be back tomorrow night for our final installment of the week, and we don't know if we'll have a guest or not. As it stands right now, we won't.
I do.
But
I know.
Oh, okay.
Now, we're not going to have a guest. It's going to be a great program tomorrow night. I've got something, and I didn't tell you this because of events today. That's right. I've got something great planned for tomorrow night. You just come back, man. You trust me.
When you come back, I'm going to have to be here in less than 12 hours pretty much because we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, you baby.
No, we do have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we do. Florida, hey, folks, please sign up. I'd love to meet you down in Orlando, Propaganda News Summit.
If you can't get there, sign up for the online streaming. It's available on prophecyinthenews.com or on hagmanandhagmann.com on the right-hand side. Sign up, $50. You get all the online streaming, not only as it happens live, but for 30 to 60 days afterwards, maybe for as long as you need it. The link will be up there. So for those who can't travel, sit in the comfort of your own living room, watch the conference from your computer, $50 for the live streaming. It gives you access to everything.
But come on, we'd love to see you down there.
Absolutely. It'd be an honor and a pleasure to meet you. Till tomorrow, stay safe, God bless, and if you're up in the Northeast, stay warm.
Good night.